So I'm gonna shift gears to one more thing, which is talking about the display side of the design. So, pixel video, just displaying to a display, displaying to a display that's not connected to the GPU. This is very important. I mean, that's part of Sonic's multi-projectors. I was thinking about not just the guts of rendering, but thinking about the technologies around us, the displays around us. And Pascal has some other investments in this area that are cool and important to understand. The first one is related to 4K displays. So 4K is pretty much pervasive now, right? There's 4K TVs, 4K monitors, 4K streaming is coming up, but until now, you can't get 4K streaming on the PC, and the reason for that is you have to have a lot of technologies that come together in order to pull that off. And Microsoft has a new standard called PlayReady 3.0, which is their standard for defining if a GPU has all the right properties for taking care of the content that comes from the developers and having the right backend capabilities in terms of display and decode capabilities to be ready to take 4K content. And as what Microsoft says here is NVIDIA is PlayReady is going to be PlayReady 3.0 certified, meaning that we are ready we have this capability that enables us to take 4K content. And Netflix, which we're working closely with, this will enable them to do that. Now, their time for when they do that is going to be up to them. But we are now the first company that I know of that has met the bar that Netflix and other companies like that are looking for to be able to stream 4K. So I love gaming, and gaming is great. But if you're a gamer that's like in a dorm room and you've got your PC and that's your computer, you're gonna have a PC and a separate TV set. You want to be able to game, but also enjoy media, other things like that, right? And this is the path that enables people to do that. So, yeah.
Is the specification that purely from performance or particular features as part of the process?
So the specification is not a performance specification, or that's only part of it. You have to have many features in the design. You have to have features related to taking care of the content that comes into the chip. You have to have features related to being able to decode that content, like with HEVC, for example, and then features, of course, on the display side as well. So all those together. Okay.
So Maxwell, second generation Maxwell stuff, it had decoding, it had HDCP 2.2. So what is it that Pascal actually adds to be compliant with PlayReady 3.0 that Maxwell lacked?
Yeah, so I think there's at least two things. So one thing is, as I mentioned, some of the security features related to this, right? This technology, right? So that Pascal adds. The second thing is that for many of these 4K content folks, they actually stream the data in 10-bit, HEVC 10-bit. And if you're streaming HDC 10-bit, then that's a new capability that we're bringing in for Maxwell. So yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah.
Maybe you're getting to this on the next slide. Yeah. But do you do all the things that are needed for the new Ultra HD Premium standard that the TV manufacturers use, like BD 2020 color representation and that HDR?
So I don't know. So maybe we can make a note of your question, and then we can have someone that can get back to you on that. Is that?
What about 5-point sound?
I'm sorry.
What about 5-point sound on that streaming?
5-point sound.
5.1 sound.
5.1 sound. I don't know I don't know the audio question either, I guess. So yeah. So if we could just make a note of your question, we can follow up on that. Okay. Why don't I keep going here? Actually, any questions on 4K? Okay, so HDR, and if we have some cool HDR displays in the back here. So HDR is another area where we made some significant investments. HDR is not hopefully not an unfamiliar thing to you guys at this point. It's been a big push, especially by the display industry, the last couple of years to get to HDR. We've been limited by this yellow triangle in the middle is sort of the classical gamut that was the gamut of shitty color televisions, with CRTs when those were first invented before any of us were born, probably, something like that, right? Is that the right way to put it? I don't know. Maybe not. Okay. Tone it down a little? Okay. Tone it down. Okay. All right. But that's the reality is that's where the whole industry has been saddled since then, because it's a standard, and changing standards is hard. And even though like nobody has a CRT on their desk anymore, they have these really great LCD TVs. We still are stuck in that old gamut, and we're still stuck in the brightness definition of this old beam scanning whatever thing, right? So HDR is finally moving the industry forward into actually taking advantage of the technology that's now available, right? So expanding the visible spectrum out to be a much better fit to that overall spectrum that the eye can see, taking advantage of the fact that these LED displays can drive at a much better brightness than before. That's valuable. One reason that's valuable is it gives you more saturated colors. So one of the problems you have with sort of a low brightness display is like you want to show somebody fire, right? There's fire burning here, right? Well, if you make the fire be the red color that fire is, it's going to be kind of dim because you're only using a third of the brightness of the display. So if you really want to give them the sense that the fire is bright, you got to desaturate it. You got to turn off the blue and the green just to get that overall brightness to be up, right? So the value of these higher 1000 nit as a definition of brightness displays is you don't have to do that anymore. You can keep more of the real color definition while still getting the right level of brightness in the design. And the contrast ratio related to the brightness gives you that sense of deep darks and very bright whites, and you have to have a really good color range in order to do that. So that's what HDR is about. Pascal makes a couple of changes to help with HDR. So one, as I mentioned already, is that we have a new HEVC decoder in this generation. So in Pascal, the previous generation of HEVC decoder was 8-bit decode. 8-bit is fine for a classical display, but for HDR, 8 bits is not enough. And so we actually have both 10-bit and even 12-bit support for HEVC encoders. You can actually have 12 bits of color information per pixel, and that's needed to span this super wide range without losing precision in the design. You don't want to have banding in the display, this super awesome display that you just paid money for. We also enhanced our HEVC encoder, so now you can actually record in HDR also, not just read back. Yeah.
Just a curiosity, is the display that we're looking at these things on an HDR display?
This is not an HDR display. I actually asked Fish. I was like, man, Fish, we need an HDR display. The Fish said we paid like $100,000 for this. HDR-ish, yeah.
And that it doesn't support the wide gamut, but it does support very high brightness, luminance. In fact, I think it's like 1500 nits. Actually, I think it's 1500 nits at full brightness, which I don't know if they want to play around with it, just to give everyone a little flavor for it. Maybe they could just well, I mean,
let's not do that. Anyways,
it can HDR. Like if you're tuning content for HDR, you turn it up till it hurts your eyes, and you click it down one notch, and then it's like
PowerPoint doesn't support HDR yet, so this is not HDR.
Yeah, I mean it's not it's just just on brightness and color range. There's kind of two important values there.
Yeah, sorry, what was your question? Which color gamut are we supporting? I don't know that. So maybe we just take a note of that one too. And we can try to make sure some of this detail is in the reviewers guide for that.
We support BD2020.
BD2020, okay. Yeah.
So is HDR output feature paired with just a 4K resolution, or can you do HDR output with Full HD resolution?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to do that. Supporting HDR is not necessarily tied into 4K. So just on that, I did also have a note here. So on the HDI interface side, so we've gone from DisplayPort 1.2 to DisplayPort 1.4. So that adds this new HBR3 higher bandwidth signaling, so you can do higher resolution and also more bits per pixel for HDR. And that also adds support for their standard for sending some of the metadata over, so that you can tell the display on the other end, what to do with the pixels when you've got them. So that's what we've done in the hardware. Now, and of course, and you guys should check out the demo in the back here. So the good news is that, particularly on the television side, this is not just a future thing. This is actually a now thing, right? So televisions are here. HDR televisions, we expect about 4 million units this year are going to ship with HDR support in them. But there's a challenge there, which is that if your PC isn't in your living room, you have to move your PC to the living room now in order to hook it up with this awesome new television just got. But we have a solution for that. So not only does GTX 1080 have a 10-bit HDC encoder, our Shield device also has an HDC 10-bit decoder. So if you have a HDR TV or get an HDR TV, you can now with GameStream HDR in your living room take full advantage of that awesome capability, right? We can basically, on your GameStream enabled PC, wherever it is in your house, you can go, fire up that HDR game, through GameKit. It'll ship it over to the Shield device. Shield device will decode it, and then you've got that awesome experience on your TV with no requirement to have sort of a 50-foot cable from your TV to wherever your PC is. So this is coming this summer. We'll have a new GameStream release that will enable HDR support with GameStream for the first time. So with 1080 plus Shield, you've got a full solution for HDR TV sets.
I'm sure you guys are talking to monitor vendors a lot. So what is your view on HDR and PC monitors? When is it coming? What are the developments? Are there any scalar chips that do it?
So my understanding is early next year. Is that about right? So
as fast as we can make it happen.
Yeah, we would like it to be very fast.
Jonah has some strong opinions about that, as you might have heard.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It would be nice if they were now, but yeah, they are coming, and they're not clueless about this being a great experience. They're working hard on this as far as. Okay.
If you haven't mentioned it, there's a bunch of demos in the back for HDR2 that you can check out.
Yes, and Tony, do you want to talk about the game work you guys are doing with games at all here?
Yeah, sure. So, in my opinion, HDR is probably one of the kind of coolest things to come around in the display technology in a really long time. I'm not sure which I find cooler, 4K or HDR, so we'll just say you need both. But we've worked with a bunch of game developers to start integrations on the HDR side. The nice thing is that it's pretty straightforward, particularly with most modern games. They already render in a high dynamic range way. They typically render to an off-screen surface, and the G-buffer precision is in 16-bit floating point per component, so there's plenty of precision there. So we just generally we just have to work with them to update, I'll call it their tone mapper, to be HDR aware. And then integrate some API calls so that the game can detect that there's a HDR capable display connected, put it in HDR mode, query it in terms of nits and brightness, do the right thing in their tone mapper, and away they go. So we've got about a little more than half a dozen games that we've already worked with to start integrations on HDR. And it can make a really dramatic difference. And some of those games are back here as well, and you can check out LDR, low dynamic range versus high dynamic range, kind of A/B examples. It's pretty awesome. And the nice thing is it generally doesn't require a great deal of content reauthoring. Like I said, a lot of it, from an engine perspective, they're already doing 99% of the hard work. They just need to make some changes to that final tone map resolve pass, and then have some awareness of an HDR display. So we have APIs for all of that we provide to game developers as well, and that's part of GameWorks as an SDK too.
Cool. Thank you, Tony. Okay, so that's it. So I hope I gave you guys a good understanding of sort of the architecture, what we were doing going to 16 FinFET, some of the work that we did and that our friends did, to make a really awesomely fast memory interface, and then just the whole mentality, craftsmanship, that went into this design, to from the architecture to the design and implementation to the board, the power supply, just everywhere. The whole team just focused on that idea of just being great craftsmen, building a great product for you guys to enjoy. So that's what I have. So thank you, everybody.